Let's redo the same problem in the other direction as well, though. So we've already done problems A, B, C, and we're going to redo D, just to show you that you do get the same exact answer as the way that we did it before. So we always are starting out with our R squared. We grouped it with the 3RW before, because again, remember we can't use the 9TW because there's nothing in common. There's no terms that are in common with the R squared. We're going to do the reverse this time, though. We're going to use the negative 3RT just to show you get the same answer as the way we just did it. So we will use the negative 3RT. Again, we're going to do the same thing that we did before because we need to know what those last two, what order they need to be in, and we need to get that right. So to figure out what order they need to go in, let's cheat a little bit, quote unquote cheat, and see what's supposed to happen so that we can make sure that they match. So what do these two have in common? They both have an R. So we can factor out an R, which will leave us with one R left, and then we'll have the negative 3 and the T. Now, how does that help us tell us what order those two up top need to be in? Well, it helps us because we need to have the term with the R first and the term with the T coming second so that they'll match up, because remember the goal is that these are going to have to match. So the term with the R has to come first. That's the positive 3RW. And then that means the negative 9TW needs to come second. Negative 9TW. Now, the question is, what do those two have in common? Well, they have a 3 and a 9, so they're both divisible by 3. I'm not going to pull out a negative this time because I have a plus on my first term, not a minus or a negative. What else do they have in common? They both have a W. So let's pull out a 3 and a W. Our leftovers will go inside of their own set of parentheses. So factoring out the 3 and the W does leave me with an R. Factoring out the 3 into the negative 9 gives me a negative 3, and I still have a T. Notice I did do this right because why? I have a matching R minus 3T. So I can pull out my matching R minus 3T. The question is, what's going to be left over in another set of parentheses now? Well, what's left over after I pull out the R minus 3T from both is an R plus 3W. And what we got last time was the exact same thing, but in the reverse order. We got the R plus 3W first and the R minus 3T second. Doesn't matter, this is exactly the same. It's just in a different order. So it does show you that it doesn't matter which way you do it, you still get the same answer, which is pretty awesome. Continuing along, let's take a look at problem E. In problem E, we have 7AB plus 35BC plus A plus 5C. So let's start out by looking at the first two because we don't have anything in common between all four terms. We're going to be grouping because we have four terms. We can group the first two. What do the first two have in common? Notice they have a 7 and a 35. Both 7 and 35 are divisible by 7. Also, what they both have is they both have a factor of b. So I can pull out a factor of 7 and a b from both pieces, and then our leftovers will go inside of our parentheses to save for later. So if we pull out both a factor of 7 and b, I'll be left with an a on the first piece, and that's all from the first piece. Carry down my plus sign. Then 7 will go into 35 5 times. So I'll be left with a factor of 5. We're going to pull out the B, but we still will have a C left over. Let's take a look at the second pair. Well, notice before we even hit the second pair, we've got a plus sign, so let's pull that down. Now notice the second pair don't have anything in common. It's just an A plus 5C, and that's okay. If they don't have anything in common, what we can go ahead and do is just put a 1 out in front. That won't change anything. It means we technically have not really pulled anything there. We're just writing the hidden 1. The reason why that's okay with this one is notice we do still end up with a matching piece. We still have the A plus 5 parentheses and all that are now matching. So we do have our matching common factor. So we did do this correctly. You could reorder this one, you just don't need to. But we can pull out our matching A plus 5 with parentheses, A plus 5C with parentheses around it. And then whatever's left over will go in its own set of parentheses. Well, what's left over after you pull out an A plus 5C from both terms is the 7B plus 1. So that'll be left over in the other set of parentheses, the 7B plus 1. And that will be our final answer. Had you reordered this instead, you would have gotten the 7B plus 1 first and the A plus 5C second, but it would have been the exact same answer, or at least equivalent. Let's take a look at F. In problem F, let's take a look. We have 3xy plus 9x minus 2y minus 6. And again, notice we don't have anything common between all 4 terms, so we have 4 terms though, so we're going to group the first 2. And let's see, we'll group the second 2. Let's group the second 2. So let's see what's going to happen here. If we group the first 2, notice that the first 2 have a 3 and a 9, which means they're both divisible by 3. Notice they also both have an x, so I can factor out a 3 and an x from both pieces. So that's how we'll start with the first pair. And then whatever left over will go inside of its own set of parentheses. So in the first piece, if we factor out the 3 and the x, that will only leave us with the y plus, now factoring the 3 out of the 9, 3 goes into 9. Will leave us with a factor of 3, but pulling out the x will mean it's gone from the second piece. Now let's look at our second pair. Again, remember we're treating this like its own problem, so what we should notice is that first term has a negative. Remember, if the first term has a negative, we're going to pull out a negative as part of our common factor. We also have a 2 and a 6, which are both divisible by 2, so I am actually going to factor out a negative 2 from both terms. And let's see what happens. Well, if we factor out the negative 2, all we'll have left from the first piece is just the y. Then dividing the negative 2 out of the negative 6 will leave us with a positive 3. If you had forgotten to pull out the negative from the second piece, what would have happened is our 2 pieces would not have matched. However, we did catch it, so they do match, so we did do this correctly. If somehow they don't match, remember it's because you did something wrong. So we've got our matching y plus 3. That's our new common factor that we can pull out. The y plus 3's both have parentheses, so that when I pull them out, they'll still have the parentheses. And whatever's left over will go in another set of parentheses because they're leftovers. We'll have left over the 3x and the minus 2. And that is going to be our final answer. Now notice that if you wanted to double check that this is indeed the same thing that we started out with, you can. You just need to FOIL it out. And that is our final answer. And